Generational curses can be broken not only by prayer, by a lifestyle that I'm teaching you. It's a life that can separate you from the rest. You tell yourself that I am a different one. When others are married and coming back, I'm totally different. We might look alike, we might dress the same way, we are different. And it was a proverb in Israel, a saying all over. Wherever you go in the streets, if you find people jobless sitting in the streets, if you find people doing nothing or suffering or doing crime or what, you ask them what's wrong. They will look at you and say, don't you know the proverb around town? That the fathers ate grapes, but the children are the ones suffering. We are the children of fathers. It was well known in Israel that when a father commits a crime, children pay. Do you remember the woman that Elisha helped? The husband of that woman was serving a prophet and he died in debt. Then the man came to get his money, only to see that there's no money here. And he said, give me your firstborn. The man wanted to take a son to pay a father's debt. Children pay. It was a proverb in Israel and even in our days. Generational curses are not things that you did wrong and suffered. Somebody else in your blood, there is a trace of a man, a woman in your blood who did something wrong. And the curse landed upon him, and you were born by the same womb. Or your mother was born by that womb, and you were also born. You are not stopping to give birth, you are giving back birth to your own. Same blood, same people, same curse. The thing was committed once, but you won't pay once. You pay forever. Because the wages of sin, death. You don't die once, you die once you are dead for good. You pay for life. You are dead for eternity. You are dead for life. We have to look at this matter with patience and exercising caution. Imagine the obedience of Abraham. Abraham was obedient to God, right? And he had the ability to hear God. The father's ability to hear God almost caused death to the son Isaac. Having a father who can hear from God, one day God said, kill your son. Something that God cannot tell a father who cannot hear him. What you clap hands saying, that's the advantage of my father. My father can hear God. One day God spoke to him, and your father heard God saying, he must put you to death. Those are also generational curses. You wake up, your father, a godly man, dragging you to the mountain. To do what? But who told you about this? God spoke to me, my son, you have to die. Imagine if you are Isaac. Are you going to enjoy hearing from God from that day? You'll be afraid. When you see God speaking there, you run away from his voice because you don't know. Why is Isaac has to run away? He is born from a family that God speaks to, and he doesn't know what God is going to say next. So being born by Abraham, even today, if you're Abraham's son, you wouldn't love to hear from God. You say, Isaac was blessed. He was born by Abraham. It wasn't a blessing. What kind of a blessing is that you wake up in the morning and your father wants to kill you? He's saying, I'm obeying God by killing you. You already have your plans, university and what, beautiful woman and good life. And he's saying, forget about all that. God spoke to me. From that same day, you would leave the God of your father. Look for other gods. This your God, my father, I don't like it. It was a different case for Isaac. To Abraham, it was good obeying God, but to Isaac, it was not the case. He needed counseling. Forgive your father. Forgive even the God of your father. He didn't mean to kill you. He was just testing your father. It will take you years to understand that God did not want me dead. I'm talking about a son born into a godly family. Their case is still. So don't tell me that those that are born by prophets, they are safe. Will you manage? You wake up in the morning, you want to drive, and your husband, the prophet, walks out. Said, I just heard God talking to me that the car you want to drive, the car you love, give it away to so and so. God will bless you. And that's all you have. You curse the day you were married to that man. That every time I get anything good, God talks to my husband and he takes it away. You won't like it. So even if this life that you want to be married to men of God and all this, you must be ready. You must be ready. You must not just see all the good things. There are challenges that you have to be ready to go through. Those are cases in the same line of calling. It's not about the posters and banners and what. They will call you for photo shoot and you'll be forced to smile. You can't even smile for. There are challenges everywhere. Just to put a smile, it's a breakthrough. But you are here praying. You haven't looked at that angle. That even smiling can be a challenge. All you want is that becoming a public figure. You're celebrated wherever you go. It's not the case. But all these things I'm talking about, there are ways still of avoiding. Before you avoid, you must know. That knowledge will lead you to the right thing to avoid. Cain and Abel are being born by Adam and Eve outside the garden. But the voice of God came to Adam and said, be fruitful, multiply. They were told to give birth. And Abraham got busy and Eve in the garden, they started to enjoy life. They forgot about having a child. Life was too good in the garden. Guys, are you here? Only to give birth outside the garden when there was nothing much to do anymore. The good life is gone. They are faced by challenges. That's when they remember that, but one day God said, you must multiply. Then the Bible says, and Adam knew his wife Eve, and they gave birth to Cain and Abel. The boys are born, they are growing up. as farmers. But Adam was not a farmer in the garden. You wake up with a father who's a farmer. But check the history of your father. Let him explain to you where he's coming from. You'll be shocked. When your father points at the garden, Cain and Abel knew about the garden. That was the first year house, the White House, the State House. And your father is telling you that we used to stay there. Father, what happened? Curses in the blood. You are meant by God to be born in the garden, but you were born outside. Because your father and your mother disobeyed God, and the curse rested upon not only Adam and Eve, but all of you. Am I making sense? You are a Cain. You are an Abel. But you are not in the garden. All you know is you are supposed to be the king of this area. You are a royal family. No one respects you. Because one foolish old man, old woman, years ago in your generation messed up, and the curse started to flow like a river in the blood. Some of you used to be owning lands. They can point at you. You see that Mr. Sibanda's land from here, going there to Mr. Zulu's territory there. That used to be our land. But Father, why do we have a very, very small portion? But you can point to all this land and say it was ours. They will explain to you what happened. And they will realize that it was their fault that they lost all this. They are left with it. They want all of us to fit into this. But that's not what God designed me to be. I was designed by God for a family like this one. Not after curse, but before you were cursed. There is a life your fathers used to have. That is the life that God gave you, not the life after they were cursed. Huh? Jabez, from the day he got to know the God of Israel. Who's the God of Israel? The Father. He said, enlarge my territory. He's coming from another father. This is a son born by another father. He can tell in his spirit that I have to be in a bigger space. But the father he had a smaller space. Until he moved to a bigger father who had a bigger space. We had not sinned against anyone. If you are seated there and you've got a desire to make more money and you don't know where it's coming from, I know where that desire is coming from. It is what God gave you. But I understand that God did not give it direct into your hands. God knew that you were going to come in 1960. Then God gave it to one man in 1920. And he told that man that keep this for your generations. But he lost it. Because it was already set for you to be born in 1960. You were born, but in the right place. But with a lost blessing. It used to be there. Why do Jesus, up to now, he is proud to call himself a son of David? It is because David never lost it. If the Bible says he was made poor so that he can be rich, it means he was not. It was a process to be made poor. He was not coming from a poor family. Do you know a man Boaz? He's a grandfather of Jesus. They've got a relationship, same blood, Boaz. That one, Boaz and Ruth. Boaz was a businessman. He had a farm. He was into farming and a lot of businesses. That's one of the fathers of Jesus. And there comes David. Sam, a king. So the king anointing was in their family. It is not Jesus who started calling himself a king. No. He was just a better king. There were other kings like David who came before him. It's a challenge now when you are born in a family where David, your grandfather, was a king, but was voted out of power. Now you are seated there. You are just but an ordinary citizen. We trace your books. We land on David, a powerful king, who was your grandfather. What happened in between? Those are generational cases. Are you hearing what I'm saying? Do you remember a day where Jesus said, why do you worry, you guys? Why do you worry? Because look, if the Father in heaven is dressing all this, providing accommodation for beds, what more to you? And he talks about an earthly father, that he cannot give a stone when you ask him for a bread. That is a relationship between a father and a son. There is giving in between. And there are requests coming from sons, and the father meet those requests. And he said, if a man can do this, what more God? But we have generations today that are asking for bread, or they are receiving as stones. Your generation is not giving you the accommodation you want. There's a day you woke up and say, I'd rather move out of this house because we are now overcrowded. It couldn't give you accommodation, and you went to rent somewhere. What happened to your father's house? It can't accommodate you. Here Jesus say, I go to my Father to prepare a space for you. When I'm done, I will come and fetch you. First space for you to fit before I come. Because Jesus is starting a new generation that knows no poverty. So he's saying accommodation first. But what happened to our own generations that introduced us to the earth? Where is our space? It cannot even provide that. Because of a curse that can be broken by you and start afresh. Poverty, when you really want it to go, it can go. I'm saying when you really want, when you are sure that I don't want this life again. Not here and there, whereby sometimes you feel like to the moment. No. When you have made up your mind to say no to this thing, no to this guy, when you've made up your mind, it will go. It's very rare in our days, or in this continent of ours, for one to be born in a good family. Because we now have very few established families. The rest of us are suffering. The rest of the people are suffering. There must be people from those families to stand up and make a decision to end this thing. It starts with a confession. If you talk poverty, you live poverty. You wake up in the morning, your mother says, we don't have food. You tell your mother that in my days we shall have plenty. Don't talk the situation. Change it. You might not have the resources to change it now, but the best tool you have currently is that your word that you speak. When they tell you that we don't have anything, what are you going to say? Sow seeds of your words. Throw words into the future. Say something. Do not confirm what you are going through. If they tell you there's trouble, if you want to see trouble, for sure, tell them that there is trouble. But if you don't want to see trouble, say something different. People, I'm telling you this. I'm standing before you here. Without quoting anyone else I know, I'll tell you this as an example. Poverty. At the end of the day, when we sit down and ask people to take no offense in this statement, I will tell you that it's a choice. And bring you individuals who were born in difficult, painful environments. But they stood up. They changed everything. They are now successful. They grew out of those cases. You make up your mind and you are in agreement from your hair that we are destined for greatness. You tell yourself that I am royalty. Whether I don't have a king as my grandfather, but I can have a child who can be a king. Or I can be a king myself. You tell yourself that this is who I am. Don't let people define you. And Jesus said, I am the Alpha and the Omega. My reward I will give you according to the works that you've done. From Adam, there comes all of us. We know that, right? When we talk about Adam, we have to understand that we are not just talking about the dangers that might have occurred in the life of Cain or Abel. I'm talking about what we are suffering today, all of us, is as a result of that. We all started in the loins of Adam in the garden. But because the snake ministered to our mother, Eve, eventually they were both kicked by God out of the garden. them. When they were out there, they started multiplying until you were born yourself. I do not remember a day that God negotiated with Adam to take him back to the garden. He kept on multiplying whilst outside, meaning that all the generations we have under the sun, from Chinese, whites, blacks, Indians, coloreds, are generations that were born outside the garden. They are born with a curse. If you see other continents succeeding, it is not because they don't have the curse you have. They have it, but they're the way to break it. You don't have to think other whites are rich. They are the same measure of grace given to them. Remember, the grace given was not even a blessing. It was a curse, that you shall till the ground. You shall go back to the ground. Thorns shall come from the ground. Remember, there were no thorns in the Genesis when God was creating. Thorns are as a result that a curse still exists. To disturb your growth and to disturb you from working on your ground, thorns shall be growing from the ground. This is a curse given to mankind, not black skin, everybody else. This poverty in Africa is our choice. We can bring this to an end. It can come to an end. All continents and all tribes of people, different skins and languages, we were cursed by one curse, by the same God. We were blessed by one voice, by the same God, one blessing. Why are sufferings different? Some in that case decided to stand out and say, no, we have to bring this case to an end. And God backed them up to bring it to an end. Some decided to continue suffering. And they gave birth to children who don't want to suffer, but still they are suffering because they are born into that family. The snake went to Eve and presented a subject there that God had spoken about before. The snake admitted that God talks to you. He said, did God say this? Simply saying, I know, the devil is saying, I know your God talks and I know your God spoke to you before I talked to you. Before God talks to you, now that's point number one. And that's all I'll give you today. Point number one, to break a generational curse.